Well, I got stopped recording because of the fact that the phone rang. It's one of the disadvantages of using your iPhone as a camera. And then I got stopped because the voicemail message popped up, and you'll probably hear a noise in a few seconds letting me know that I have a text message telling me I have a voice message. Alright. So, I have been asked to make a vlog to sort of catch everybody up with my life. I don't exactly know why you guys are actually curious about that, because as I've said 100,000 times before, my life does not change. It is a series of repetitive cycles. I go to work. I come home to an empty apartment. I sit in front of my computer. I zone out. I go to bed. Repeat. The weekends are just extended parts of 2 and 3, where I get up, I sit in front of my computer, I zone out, and then I go to bed. That's really the reality of my life. Now, is that the camera? Oh my god, the camera. I make no efforts to change this fact, because I don't feel that I'm emotionally stimulated enough to do so. And the reason why that is because my standing, or my mental state when it comes to being in the world that I've created and live in now, fluctuates from one extreme to another. One day, I'm completely content with being alone, and sitting in a small room in front of a computer monitor, doing nothing but chatting, watching movies, and playing video games. The next day, I'm completely miserable because I've done nothing to really make my life into anything. The day after that, I'm extremely lonely because I'm by myself in this empty apartment, doing nothing except playing video games. And then the day after that, I really don't have an opinion. And then some days, I get to go through that entire spectrum of emotional standing within 15 minutes of each other. So if you can imagine, within 2 hours, I felt all 4 of those ways. Boy, it's exciting. Now, there are people that say that when you stay by yourself, or if you don't get out, you get trapped in these mental circles where you feed on the state of being, and it only makes it worse. You fall further and further down the spiral. If you are alone, depression has a way of propagating itself. It's a self-perpetuation machine. You get depressed, then you can see that life isn't really that great, which feeds to depression, and so on and so on and so on. But because of the fact that I am not consistent when it comes to that, I haven't really gotten to that point yet. And I've been doing this for quite a few years. My physical being, my physical person, the weight that I've put on, is a testament to that. You know, in the last 10, 12 years, I went from being 180 pounds to 260 pounds. 265, maybe I'm up to 270. I'm obviously a large dude. And that in itself is a you would think that was enough to motivate me to get out and do stuff. You would think that wanting to be in a better state of mind is enough. You would think that being able to observe myself and be self-aware enough to know that these are not healthy patterns would be enough to get me out the door. And yet, they're not. You know, you would think that the state of mind that would put me into a situation where I risk myself in a terminal sense, where I actually can put myself into very dangerous situations, being by myself, and I'm not talking about, like dropping a television into the bathtub while I'm taking a bath, or swallowing, like, Ajax or something like that, but I am full of brain candy. I've been saying that for years. Anybody who's watched any of the videos that I've put up will have heard me say that. Now, some of you have just sort of heard me say that. Some of you may have had the pleasure of dealing with me when I've been in a more depressed state and heard me talk. But I think that's about as far as the experience that the entire scope of you have had, where you've had the opportunity to find out, little bits and pieces of what I mean when I say brain candy. Well, you're in luck, because for all of you out there who have heard me say it and really don't have a point of reference, I now have one that I can give you in a glaring graphical display. One of the many, many wonderful traits that I get to carry for being me is a thing called night terrors. Now, I don't know if you know what that is. If you do, great. For those of you that don't, I will explain. Night terrors is a state where a person is woken or wakes up in a state of panic, fear, or stress. Just out of nowhere, there's no external stimulation, there's nothing going on in the environment, and yet they wake up, there are instances of people screaming and flailing and whatnot. Now, I've been inflicted with this since I was very, very young. I've had this problem since I was a very, very young child. And I've had people tell me what I've done when I've woken up. They tell me that I scream. They tell me that I've woken up screaming. Even an ex-girlfriend who laid next to me has had that happen. She's heard me flipping out. the only things that I recall are waking up in a state of panic and defending myself, like I'm fighting off an attacker that isn't there. And this has been going on for many, many years. That, in and of itself, is one, I think, personally, one of the things that has spurred on my paranoia. I do have a level of paranoia when it comes to my personal space. It's kind of hard to explain, but and it's not paranoia like I think the government's out to get me or there's space aliens that could come and probe my ass or anything like that. But it's definitely a state of fear that I will be in a dangerous situation. So in the last few years, due to circumstances, and when I say circumstances, I mean just general circumstances. I happened to be living with a gun nut at one point when I was living at my old place. He's a very pro gun kind of guy, and because of him, I ended up picking up a firearm. I have a .45 caliber handgun, a Sig Sauer P220, which is an ACP .45 caliber handgun. So for the last few years, I've been laying in bed asleep with this gun within arm's reach. Now, at first, the gun was empty. There was no bullets in the magazine, just the gun itself. And that was supposed to be, just I guess for a sense of my own well-being. But over time, over the course of a few months, I got it into my head that having the gun, if a circumstance comes up, having it but not having it loaded is basically just like I'm holding a piece of, it'd be like holding a stick, it's not really, or holding a sock. It's not really dangerous. It looks dangerous, but if it came down to where I needed to use it. So the next step for me was to put a couple rounds in the magazine, but not to chamber them, so that I had to actively take a step to chamber the round into the firearm before I was able to fire it. And that worked fine for a while. But one night, I had woken up and scrambled for the gun. And it had, because I toss and turn, so obviously I pushed it off the bed onto the floor or whatever. And I scrambled for it, and I was freaked out. So I had decided that I needed something a little bit more serious. So I actually chambered around, and I uncocked the hammer, and I slept with the gun like that for one night. The next night, I had this same sort of night turn. I woke up, and as soon as I grabbed the gun, I realized I had a loaded firearm, chambered round, loaded firearm, in my hand, which scared me very, very badly because I respect firearms. I respect them very much. I know that they can do. I know that they can kill. So I immediately ejected the magazine, pulled the slide, ejected the round, put the gun across the room from myself, calmed myself down from the night terror and went back to sleep. And decided from that point forward it wasn't a smart thing to do. So I started sleeping with the gun, and I would have the magazine separate. So once again, there were bullets in the magazine. Magazine was separate. I would have to take an extra step to load the magazine into the handgun and then pull the slide on the handgun before a round would be chambered and the gun would be live. I figured if I was in a situation where I woke up and freaked out, the first step that I would do would be to load the magazine into the gun, and then I would be awake enough to realize what would happen, and I was still pretty safe. So I did that for a long time. I did that for, I'd say, probably about a year, where the gun was there, the magazine was there. But after a while, it was getting to the point where I had to keep looking for the magazine so I could put it next to the gun when I went to sleep at night. So I just went back to just putting the magazine in the gun, but no rounds were chambered in the gun. It was still a dangerous thing to do, and I understand that, but I felt comfortable and confident enough in my cognitive skills to recognize the environment that I had put myself in so that when the time came, I would be okay. So this went on for about, I'd say 3 or 4 years. All the way through, my last place in San Jose, or the place before last in San Jose, and then all the way up into Colorado, and all the way through Colorado, and all the way at my other place, the last place I was at, where I had a firearm with 5 bullets and an 8-bullet magazine, because I didn't want to compress the spring completely. And that was good. There were a few times where I woke up and immediately pulled the slide on the handgun, and I recognized this was that to me, that was enough. That was enough of an action, a physical exertion, to wake me up, to have me realize what was going on. And I'd had a live firearm, the hammer was cocked, a bullet was in the chamber. That was enough for me to realize that this was, okay, I'm awake, I'm back in where I'm supposed to be. I'm not being attacked by anything. Immediately use the decocker so that the firearm is in a firing position. Eject the magazine. Eject the round by pulling the slide. Putting the round back into the magazine. Just making sure that everything was safe again, and going back to sleep. And for the longest time, that was the reality of what had happened. Until the other night. I was lying in bed, and I will show you here. This is my bed. I was lying in bed, asleep. The gun was right about here. Okay. Gun was right about here. Now, I am completely unconscious. The gun had 5 rounds. 5 rounds in the magazine. Magazine was loaded. Nothing in the chamber. Gun was lying here. I was asleep. I went from this position, sleeping. I think actually I was on my side, because I just remember. I went from being here, and once again, remember, the gun's over here. I went from being like this to rolling over, and this is while waking up from a night terror. Not fully awake, not fully functional. Rolled over, grabbed the gun, pulled the slide, and fired a round out my bedroom window. You see that hole? Yep. Make sure you see it. I fired a live round out of my bedroom window, and thank God I had fired it from this position, up. So the bullet traveled, instead of traveling across and potentially killing one of my neighbors, shot up. As you can see, the gun is no longer anywhere near my fucking bed. I've unloaded the clips, the magazines. I've unloaded them, separated them from the gun itself, put the gun in one place, put the bullets in another. But that should give you an idea of what my life is like, and all the fun I get to experience. So there you go. You wanted a fucking story about what's been going on with me and my life? Hope that fills that gap for you.